Welcome to Antimatter Garage. As you know, I'm in the middle of the Supercharger install videos, and I just wanted to let you know that the last video took me from page 1 to page 3. This video literally just covers page 4, which is removing the intake manifold. This is one of the hardest parts, or one of the parts that gave me the most trouble. However, if you watch this video, maybe it will go smoother for you, because there was a very long struggle involved with getting to the point where I could get the intake manifold out. And I should warn you that once you get to that point, taking the intake manifold out is also a bit of a hassle. I mean, I was turning it, I was sliding it, I was pulling on it, I was scratching up the firewall, I was cursing. Dogs and cats living together, chaos, seriously. I don't know what your hole is going to look like, because your wiring might be a little bit different, your hose routing, what you pull out of the way might be different, but just be aware that it could be a bit of a struggle. That's it. Good luck. All right, the next step calls for removing the intake manifold. However, somebody on Spyder Chat said, no way of getting that out. He's calling BS on that. He may be right, at least the way it is now. So I've got to snake that thing. You can see how big it is where I'm pointing, all the way, goes all the way down there. That huge thing's got to come out through this hole. So I'm not saying it can't be done, but I don't think it can be done the way I've got it right here. So I'm going to need to come up with a better way to clamp off these coolant lines. I do not want them leaking anymore. It was really annoying to clean all that up. It gets sticky. I also think I'm going to go ahead and, they were saying you can just push this aside, the throttle body, but I think I can, I think the only thing holding it on still is the cables. So I think I'm just going to pull those off, get it out of there, just give me more room for my hands. The other thing is, it would be nice to get rid of this very stiff wiring harness. The problem is I've got a catch-22 going on there. Over on this side, it's held, it goes down in there, and it's held on the other end all the way down on the bottom, and I can't get to the bottom stuff to disconnect it because I've got all my jacks and stuff in the way. So, and it's a catch-22 because I kind of didn't want to pull the jacks out of the way, because I thought in order to get the intake manifold out, I might want to lower the engine just a little bit. I can't do that if I secure it again. So I can't get the wiring harness out until I secure the engine. I can't secure the engine until I need the wiring harness out. So this are the problems you might encounter if you're doing this job. I think, you know, it's just very, very tight in there for the MR2 engine bay. But I just really think I need more clearance here, so I'm going to work to get some more of that stuff out of the way. It's not part of the procedure technically, but everybody's install is just a little bit different, right? Because, you know, I put all my VSVs up top here and I labeled them, and I had them connected to a little bracket. Other people don't do that. I'm hoping to come up with a different arrangement when I'm done. But yeah, right now I want to try and get a little bit more space. I also need to be careful about lowering the engine now that I think about it, because, oh yeah, the exhaust is pretty tight down there. I only have a little bit of wiggle in a flex pipe. The rest is all very solid. Alright, I didn't really want to, but I took the exhaust manifold out, and I basically came down, it came down to a simple choice. Am I going to move the engine down a little bit in order to get out, get the intake manifold out? And if the answer is yes, then I should do it now. If the answer is no, then leave it in. But I was afraid I would get to the point, and there's not a lot of room there, that I would need to move the engine down, and then I'd be forced to do it at that point. Plus, this gives me more room for the alternator install to come in from behind, which I should have done earlier. So I just decided to go ahead and do it. Fortunately, I have one more gasket. You can see this gasket, how you cannot reuse it. It's really thick, like that. So I do have one more, fortunately, so that's going to be my last attempt at that. So I'm going to make sure that when I put that exhaust manifold on, it is the last time. You may or may not have to do that. Like I said, I was doubling down on the idea of lowering the engine a little bit, so if that's the case, the exhaust system was just not going to let that happen. There's just only a tiny bit of flex there. I'd like to point out, right there, this bolt, you can see how long the intake manifold is. That's like, let me get the camera in a better spot maybe. You can see it's like 3 inches, and that's a stud. You can tell because there's a nut right on top of that. So if I remove that nut and I have to lift the intake manifold off of that, it's going to have to go up about 3 inches, and you can clearly see there's not 3 inches of clearance between that and the body. And if I lower the engine, right now I only have it released right here on this side. The other motor mounts are all still in, transmission mount and everything are all still in. So that means that that end goes down less than that end, right? Because it'll be going at an angle. And I don't see getting 3 inches out of it. So this will be very interesting. I have a bad feeling. I'm not removing the motor from this car. It's just not going to happen. I'd rather put it all back together again and send it back to the monkey wrench or whatever, resell it, than do that. That was a lot of my life when I did this the first time. But what I could perhaps do is remove all the motor mounts and allow it to drop even more until I'm starting to stress stuff. I'd have to make sure that doesn't happen. I wouldn't want to bust any lines or cables or hoses or anything of that nature. But there's a chance maybe something like that could happen, in which case I'll definitely have to have more support on the bottom. So I'm a little bit concerned because I haven't come up yet with an idea on how to remove all the stuff out from underneath this. It's possible what I could do is put the motor mount back in on this side. That way I could take out the one that's under the motor. Then I could maybe jack the car up further, put it on jack stands, and get rid of that one that gets out of the way. And then I could come over here and maybe use this guy and put a regular jack in there, or maybe a jack stand or something like that under the motor. Well, it'd have to be a jack because I have to control it, right? So, but either way, something's going to be in the way. I don't know how much access I need from underneath. It looks like a lot of this can be done from up top. Yeah. Well, if you're doing this, good luck. I'll show you what I do, but I can't guarantee anything at this point. All right, just talked to Toyota because these things have become ridiculously hard these days. I'm not really sure what happened, but normally I would just order the parts online, then when they came in, I'd go pick them up and pay for them. Then they went to this online system where you would go online and order the parts, and then it would be at a pretty big discount, actually. I was kind of a frequent flyer, so they were giving me like a 10% discount, but the online price was even better than that. So I was ordering it that way. The disadvantage is that the drawings for the part that you're going to order are really not very good. They're almost like hand drawings, and so it wasn't always easy to determine if you were getting the exact right part. And to make sure, you'd have to put in your VIN. But because I have an engine swap, I mean, what's the VIN, right? So I couldn't do that. And I really relied on the expertise of the counter people. Well, at one point, their system just went down. It wasn't working anymore at all. And what I wound up doing is having to go to call them again and try and order the parts. And then they'd be like, well, they can't take the credit card over the you have to prepay, and they wouldn't take the credit card over the phone. So that means I have to go down to Toyota to order the parts. And of course, they don't close at a convenient time. So now it's just become a real pain. And of course, everything's super duper expensive. So I called about the new gasket on the intake manifold because I figured if I'm going to take it this far apart and it's so hard to get to, I think I'd rather put a brand new one in than reuse it like Monkey Wrench is saying to do. In addition, this gasket right here, it's a metal one. I've already used it a couple of times now, and it's getting pretty smashed up, so I thought I would go ahead and put, that's a little easier to get to though, right? But I thought I'd go ahead and put a new one of those in as well, so I called. Strangely, the little metal one is more expensive than the rubber one. It's 20 bucks and that's 18 bucks. Not great for what you're getting, but it's not too bad for a Toyota part. So then I also wanted to get the gasket set for the fuel injectors on the top, and that's ridiculously expensive. There are 3 parts, right? There's a rubber grommet in the bottom, there's an O-ring at the top, and then there's an insulator up near the top as well. So it's 3 little rubber parts. Each one of those rubber parts at Toyota is $9. So it's basically $27 per injector to order those. Well, I'd like to inform you, if you're planning this out, fortunately Monkey Wrench has included all 3 of those parts. This part here is the grommet I was talking about. This is this blue part is the insulator, and then at the top there's a little O-ring, and I've pulled it off, and it is there. So that's really nice. What I don't like is that I guess they're translating between this fuel injector and the existing fuel injector, and so they give you this little pigtail, and it's gonna like stick up all funny like that when you plug it in. I saw on another guy who did this install on a Corolla. His name is Will Chang, by the way, just like it sounds, Will and then Chang. He did the install, so if you go to YouTube and type that in, you can look around his videos and find the one where he installed the Monkey Wrench Supercharger on his car, and that's what they look like. They really kind of, looks retarded in my opinion. It's just not, it's not elegant at all. I'd almost rather cut off the connector and put the right connector on my existing harness, but I probably won't, just in case I want to go back to stock, in case this whole Supercharger thing doesn't work for me and I want to revert to stock. I want to be able to do that. So anyway, I just thought I'd give you that information if you're interested in doing this project. The other thing that I went to check out is this. It says, first remove the triangle-shaped support bracket holding the intake cylinder near where the throttle body was located. And I looked and I could not find that. So I went and found, I have the book over here for the car. This is a very handy thing to have. If you do a lot of work on your own cars, this actually pays for itself. They're pretty expensive, although I found this on eBay, and it was like some knockoff copy, I guess you'd say, and it was a whole lot less expensive than going to Toyota. But it has, they're stealing it, so everything's exactly the same. Kind of nice. And although maybe it sure seems like genuine Toyota, so I don't know. Anyway, it's really good to have. Unfortunately, this is for an MR2, and the MR2 did not come with a 2ZZ engine, so the intake manifold's different on the 2ZZ, so it's not in there. For that, I have this. A while back, I got a little membership to alldataDIY.com. It's not so much a membership as it is buying the books electronically for your car. And at the time, I remember it being fairly reasonable. It was like $30 to buy a year subscription to your car. And if you wanted to add a car, they gave you a discount. It was like $16. I think it was also like 16 or 20 bucks to extend it for a year to year. So I have been on their site recently to buy a new one, to add a new car for a friend whose car I was fixing. And I said, I really need the book on this. I said, why don't you just buy it for, a year? It'll cost you an extra 30 bucks, price of doing business, right? So we went on there, and it was like 300 or 200 or something. I don't remember, but I remember it being like roughly 10 times the cost it used to be. So I no longer like All Data DIY, but I bought like a 5-year for this, so I still have it for a few months. And this is the 2ZZ. And the intake manifold, you can see it's different than the 1ZZ. Well, you can't see it because the 1ZZ isn't here, but you know what I mean. Anyway, there's the plate they're talking about. And it looks like it goes right at the base where the intake manifold bolts to the engine. And so I'm going to go look for that again. Alright, so this is where it should be. But I got to tell you, I'm going to try and hold the camera still. I'm sorry. You can see, here's the intake manifold because I painted it, and the engine's white. I painted that. There's no plate tying the two together in this location. I don't see the part they're talking about really here. Maybe I already took it off in the process. I'll have to go look. but, or maybe mine's just missing. Maybe the Japanese versions don't have it. Really don't know, but I'm not seeing it. Alright guys, so this is a tough one. I cannot get the camera in there, but I will try and point to where it actually is. So this item is it's one of the, I think it's one of those boil pressure valve things that switches the variable valve timing. And right there, hopefully you can see just where it's touching, is like a boss that comes up that's attached to the intake manifold. It's part of the intake manifold. And right at the top, where it would interfere with this oil thingy, is a nut or a bolt. I can't even tell. I only did it by feel. And what you have to do, I don't think you can get a socket on it, because if you look carefully here, this vent tube is in the way. In fact, I'm afraid this vent tube may be in the way of getting the intake manifold off, but they're not saying anything about it. And it looks possible that it may come out and then backward or whatever to the other side and not interfere. So we'll find out when we get there. But the way I got on it was by taking one of these box end wrenches and putting it on there and then loosening. I don't think you can get on there with a socket. Monkey Wrench says there are 6 nuts and bolts holding the intake manifold on. There's number 1, right where I showed you. The good news is, I can tell because I painted it that I took this off and put it back on again. And you can see there's a little bit on the end there of anti-seize. And that's good news, because when I do work, that means you can get it apart again, because I always torque to spec, and I always use anti-seize or Loctite, whichever the situation calls for. So 5 more to go. This I'm guessing they get harder from here. Okay, just a little note on that. As it turns out, there's a YouTube channel called Torque Test Channel or something like that. Take a look for it. If you put anti-seize on a bolt and then you torque to spec, there's a good chance you're going to be over tightening your bolts. I always thought anti-seize was maybe meant to be the right viscosity so that the bolts would torque properly. Every industry has their own like lubricant that they use. Like the Navy uses something and it's like 60 weight or something. Cars are supposed to use like 30 weight. And in fact, I think you can use 30 weight oil to do it. But apparently that's not the case, because they did a test and they were like seriously over tightening when they used anti-seize. So, you have to use your own judgment as to whether or not you want to be able to get your bolts back off at some point, or whether or not you want them torqued to spec, and what you have to do to get them there if you want both. Okay, I'm going to try and show you where the next 2 are. Hopefully you can see that. The end of my wrench is just touching. There's one there, and then another one down there. Hopefully you can see those. Looks like I might be able to get them from the top with something like this. Although in this case, there is this little ear here and this little ear here. It goes in between and it's banging. So I'm going to try and get a socket on it, which will move upward. It's really tough. Okay, that worked. And again, I'm lucky. I'm the one who did the work on this last time, so I knew it wasn't going to be overly tight. It hadn't been on there for 1,000 years. I'm pretty sure that that same method is going to work for this one. I am wrong. This one is too close to the runner to get a socket onto. Let's hope that I can get a wrench on it. I can. Unfortunately, the angle is such that it's already bumping. Okay. Well, working on cars is pain. Okay, so the second one was indeed a nut, the one that's over here. The one over here was a bolt. I got them both out, so 3 more to go. Alright, you can see right there is the wrench. on the 4th nut, or nut bolt. This is a nut, then the last one was a bolt, then a nut, then a bolt, so forth. So here we go. I've done 4. So this is actually the 5th one, sorry. Alright, so I've done 5 of the 6. The 6th one is going to be the hardest one. Monkey Wrench says it's on the bottom of the intake. I think what they're saying is, so here's the intake manifold, but this part doesn't bolt it onto the engine. This is on the engine, and that 6th one looks like, I think it comes up underneath this side, and therefore I have really almost no access. I think you're going to have to try and get it from below, and below is giving me problems because of this situation. So I'm gonna lift the car up, see if I can squeeze some way in between there. If I can't, then what I'll have to do, I guess, is put the motor mount back on so that I can, I think I mentioned this before, take that jack out that's holding the motor up, and that might give me the access I need from underneath. If not, then I'll have to jack the whole car up further, put it on jack stands, get that one out of the way, and then I should have access to everything. Unfortunately, I may have to put it all back again in order to lower the engine to get the intake manifold off. We will find out. Stay tuned. Okay, I'm under the car now. There's the transmission, so that is the driver's side, or sorry, the left side for you people in Europe, in England, and that's the right side. I thought I was going to have to remove the starter to see it, but as it turns out, it's right. Oh, there. See, in between the nipple on the, between the starter and the little nipple on the slave cylinder, way up in there, see that little white one? I think I can get on it from here. Hopefully that is visible on camera. All right, just a little note here, take the starter out. Just go ahead and take the starter out. We'll get there eventually, but when I was putting in the supercharger, it was hitting on the starter. And all these cars are the same, so I don't really understand. You know, maybe the 2ZZ came with different starters. I don't know. But after a long time, and because I wasn't sure what it was hitting on, I wound up putting, I think I put some clay in there, and it was definitely, the supercharger was definitely hitting the starter. And it was hitting on the most fragile part of the supercharger. And I wound up contacting Monkey Wrench, and they wound up sending me a new starter. It was a used starter, but it worked, and I think it's from the 1ZZ. So just a warning, a 2ZZ may not, 2ZZ starter may not fit with the supercharger. So just go ahead and take it out and make your life easier, and then figure that part out later. But be prepared, you may need a 1ZZ starter. All right, so I pulled the 6 bolts on the intake manifold. I feel like that was just a huge milestone. Here they are, resting in this pan. I was watching that guy, Will Chang, and he said when he pulled his intake manifold, he started to pull it off and it wouldn't come off, and he realized that the dipstick was still attached. So I went and looked, and on my car anyway, and I therefore assume any MR2, the dipstick doesn't attach to the intake manifold. It attaches to the, like the block, or sort of the head, I want to say, somewhere up there. Anyway, I'm only concerned about that and that vent tube that was there, and of course, having enough space. So it's a moment of truth. It's getting late. The sun's about to set, so I'm not, you know, under any illusions that this is going to come off tonight. But I'm going to give it a try. It would be really cool to hit that milestone. So to do it, I'm going to lower the car, and I'm just going to stick like a screwdriver in there or something, or just pull on it. I'm just going to try and see if I can crack it and wiggle it and make sure that it's fully loose. And then I'll look into, you know, whether or not I have to lower the engine or whatever to get it out. So wish me luck. Alright, so I was pulling on the manifold, and it's loose on the left side, but it feels like it's being held, but definitely by something. So I know it said 6 bolts, but it kind of seems like there's a 7th one on the right side of the car. So I'm going to go put a mirror. I can't really see that from the bottom or the top, so I'm going to put a mirror back there and look around and see if I can figure out what's going on. Okay, I found it. It is down there. That little bracket is attached to the motor, and right there at that screw on the end of my screwdriver, and I'll put a light on it so you can see it better. That is holding it to the intake manifold. So I'll remove that guy and then we'll see what happens. Okay, well, unsurprisingly, that intake manifold is getting caught on something, but it hasn't hit the body yet. There's still like another inch to go. So, but I can feel, it feels like something is resisting it on the right side. I'm going to jack up the car, look underneath, and see if I can find it. But to be honest, this is about it for me tonight. Got stuff to do, so I need to button this up before it gets completely dark, and I'll resume this some other day. Alright guys, I don't know how Monkey Wrench Racing's engine that they did this in their Spyder could possibly be so different from mine, but they don't mention this. But that intake manifold's not coming off because let me put the light on it. Because, where's my finger? There it is. This guy here, where my finger is, that's one of those oiling things that plugs in and controls the variable valve timing. On the other side of where my finger is a connector. And the intake manifold is not coming up off of the head because it's hitting that connector. So the only way I see it ever happening is that oil control valve thingy's got to come out of there. So I'm going to do that next, and I still believe that there's not enough room. I mean, I can only move another inch, but I need at least another 2 to get it off of there before it comes off the stud. So I'm assuming that as soon as I move that, hopefully that's the only thing keeping it from coming off. I'm assuming I'll just hit the body of the car there because I only have 1 more inch. So let me remove that and see what happens. Now, why that isn't in their instructions, which are right here. Now, remove the support bracket and the 2 bolts holding the alternator to the top of the intake. Loosen and remove the 6 nuts and bolts. That's where I am now. I did these things. Then it just says, oh, look, you're going to have trouble. You may need one person to hold the wires out of the way and another person to lift it off. It doesn't say anything about that oiling thing. So I don't know if mine's turned 180 degrees and it shouldn't be in the way or what, but it is. Well, you're going to love this as much as I do, I imagine. So I got my finger right there on the oil valve thing, and it won't come out because it hits this vent. So the vent has to come out. Yeah, not in the instructions. Alright, so I had trouble getting, with this tube at one point, getting it on and off and that sort of thing, and they were getting loose because I had something else attached there. This little guy here holds the wires. So I had 2 nuts on each one to tighten and then 1 to lock it in place. You can see there are 3 here. Drop the other one, part of doing car work. But it's too stiff to push away very far, so I'm going to remove the whole tube and hope oil doesn't come leaking out of there or something. It's supposed to be vent, right? I think this is the PCV system, right? I think it comes... I looked at my install videos for the 2ZZ, and I believe this black tube goes down next to the thermostat down the bottom down there and connects down there, so I think I can get it from underneath. And that vents the gases from the crankcase up through here and then into here and out the PCV valve, which is this guy over here, and then back into the intake. So I believe that's a PCV vent valve there, but it's our vent tube. So I think it's in the way though of getting that out. So it's, you know, one thing has to be out of the way of the other thing, has to be out of the way of the other thing, and none of it's in the instructions. Okay, originally I thought you couldn't you couldn't pull this vent pipe away enough, and I was going to take off the whole thing, but it turns out you can, because it attaches to a rubber part down at the bottom. And if you lift it up enough and you wiggle enough, you will get the oil control valve to come out, and you can maybe see it hanging down there. This connector that I'm hitting with the light there is what was in the way, and it's hanging downward and now out of the way. So I'm going to try and move the intake manifold again and see how much more comes out. Alright, so good news and bad news. The good news is that did fully release the right side, and I was able to get it completely off, and it even rotates sort of down a little bit. Unfortunately, the bad news is, on this side you can see that's the stud. I'm not fully off of the stud yet. You can't even see any threads, but I am fully up against the body there. It's literally touching, or if it's not, it's basically there. So I honestly think that the only way to do this is to try and loosen motor mounts or rotate the engine somehow, just to give it another, I think it probably needs like an inch for that intake manifold to come out of there. This has been a lot. This is like, I can't remember, day 3 or day 4 of me working on this. I didn't work every day. I did other things, but yeah, it's a shame you can't pull the stud out, and then the manifold will just come right off. It's only that stud really holding it in at this point. I mean, I think it's hitting down there as well on the bottom on stuff, but I don't think that's what's keeping it from coming out. I think if that stud were not there, I think this would come out like the side. So I'm going to look into what I can do to sort of rotate the engine or lower it. That doesn't look easy because here's the transmission mount, right? And then there's a motor mount over there, and then there's another one down there, basically transmission mount. And if I'm not mistaken, there's another one back there on the wall. So, I mean, worst case, I have to undo like all of those. Put the engine on jack, which I have that flat thing underneath, which works really well for this particular application, and then see if I can lower it. But there's just so much you got to pay attention to, because all these wires and stuff, they're attached, and you have to make sure they have enough flex to go down. Fortunately, just 1 inch or so, maybe 1.5 inches, isn't too much, so maybe that'll work. But I don't see how they think you can just take this out. Can you just pull on the engine? It goes nowhere. Alright, I started by removing this motor mount, or actually just releasing these 3, and the motor falls out from underneath that, actually. And you can see it's actually at an angle, which is a little scary. It's more of an angle than I would prefer. I mean, it may be putting pressure on the axles or something, I'm not sure. But then I started removing, or I'm mostly done removing, the rear one. Right there, you can see the bolts out here. So let me see, can I get the rest of the way out? That will allow the motor, theoretically, I need 2 hands I think, to roll this way. Maybe that's enough. If it's not, I'll have to attack a 3rd motor mount. Alright, at this point, you may be tempted to just cut that stud. I don't recommend that, because I believe that stud has to come out anyway to put the supercharger in. But the way you get it out usually is you put 2 nuts, I think they even provide them in the kit, on the other end, and you tighten them together so that they basically lock, and then you can use that to unscrew that thread from the block. If you cut that, you won't have any threads to put the 2 nuts on to get it out. Now, you might be able to, say, weld something on there and then use that, or some other means you might be able to get it out of there, but I have a feeling you might regret it. So I don't intend to do it that way. I intend to now remove this motor mount here and see if I can get it to drop even more. But I think that the engine's leaning a lot this way, and I think I want to give it some support there first. Okay, I have 3 of the motor mounts out, that one, and that one, and I've lowered it, and I still don't have enough room. So that means I'm going to have to tack that one under there. Now, you might think, well, duh, you want the rear remove, lowered, remove the rear one, right? But I thought I could roll it, and I couldn't. So if you are doing this and you want to do it, what I suggest is, and I don't want to take all of them out. I'm afraid this thing may not be quite right, and that it might, in its attempt to fall, which it can't, there's too much stuff in the way, I'm afraid it might damage something that it's that's holding it in, you know, from falling over. So I'm going to try and put the rear one back in, and then remove the front one so that at least something's holding it, and hopefully it'll rock this way down and give me the space I need. All right, I'm under the car, and that's the back. So this is the front. You can see this is what I call the front motor mount, relative to the car, not the engine. It's always tough doing front or back of engine because theoretically the front of the engine's where the belts are, and that would be the right side of the car. So I'm just going to reference everything to the car, and this is the front motor mount. I recommend if you're doing this, start here, then maybe go left and right to see if you can get that out, unlike what I did. And hopefully that'll work for you. We're going to find out. I'm just really concerned because I don't know the balance of the engine, but I kind of think it can't really it can't fall out. I mean, there's too much stuff in the way, but I just don't want to damage anything, you know, and I'm not sure, like these lines here where the AC are, you know, it could crack one of the lines or something. In fact, it's on. Yeah, it's on that. The pan is on that. All right, I'm stopping it there. Probably should have stopped it earlier. Sorry I wasted so much of your time, but I kind of wanted to get the point across as to just how hard this is. Now, you may be wondering, why was I trying to save this stud? Why was it so important to me, right? And the answer is that it's been my experience that studs have a tendency to stick in the block. And how you typically get them out is you thread 2 nuts on the end, and they'll lock when you do that. And you can use the bottom one, the top one will lock it in place, use the bottom one to get it out. That's how you extract the stud from the head. And I was afraid if I cut it, there wouldn't be anything there for me to use. So I really didn't want it to get jammed in there. So I tried many different things. I bought a pipe wrench. Pipe wrenches have a tendency when you tighten them to grab even harder, right? They dig in. It didn't work. I did contact Monkey Wrench Racing about this, and they said to use a set of vice grips on them, which I had already thought of that. I tried it. When I tightened the vice grips down as tight as they would go, there was a lot of leverage, but it just stripped metal off of the stud. It didn't remove it. And it could be that the intake manifold was applying a bending motion to it too, which makes it even tighter in there, right? So I couldn't get an angle grinder on it. I couldn't get a Sawzall on it. I wound up using just a hand saw. It took me a little while, but and I cut it sort of in the middle. You'll see in the video coming up. But bottom line is, you're not going to get it out with the stud in place. Try and get the stud out the easy way if you can. Maybe yours is real loose. By the way, when I did get done cutting it, mine was loose. I want to say I even got it out by hand. Maybe it'll be in the video. I don't know. But don't waste too much time on it. It's not worth the effort. And don't forget, the whole time you're doing this, you're leaning over the engine. You're as far out as you can get. You've got no leverage, and you're trying to pull away from you at the same time with the intake manifold, which has a tendency to want to slide back down. So it makes everything just so much harder. Don't waste your time. Try. If you can't do it, cut the stud. Well, it didn't work. It's still right there, laughing at me. I've given up. I'm gonna cut it. And my method for getting out of there after I cut it is to weld on a nut and then put a socket on it and hope that the weld holds. Hope that I can get a good enough weld on it for the weld to hold. And get the socket, get the stud out of there. If not, I'm gonna have to come up with, this could be a real nightmare. But first I have to tape up the intake because I don't want chips of metal going into my engine. So yeah, wish me luck. Alright, just wanted to document real quick where I'm cutting it. So hopefully if I move this around a little, you'll see the line. It's about kind of in the middle, and I'll let you know if that's good or if it should be closer to the block or closer to the intake.
All right, there it is. Cut it off. It was not easy. I couldn't get a grinder on it. I couldn't get a Sawzall on it, so I had to go old school with a hacksaw. And of course, as it started getting close to the end, it pinched the hacksaw. I couldn't move it. I had to pry it out of there and then start from the top, and it was a nightmare. Finally, I just sort of hit it, and it broke the last little bit off. But you know, it felt like that was getting a little loose. Let me see. I'm sorry I can't get the camera in there, but let me... Yeah, I believe... Oh, maybe not. I thought maybe I could just... I thought it got loose. If I could get it out of there. Guess not. I don't know, I've been working on this for 10 minutes maybe. It's pretty well jammed up in there. I'm seriously considering trying to sneak the supercharger in from that direction and just leaving the intake manifold in there permanently. I don't know, I feel like it's caught on something underneath. And I'm afraid if I pull too hard I'm going to be damaging some wires or something, but I can't feel anything there. Something underneath there. Yeah, I think it was catching on, maybe on this thing. Can you guys see that? Yeah. This thing or this? This was clear already, so I don't know what the deal is with that. Oh my word, finally. You know, now that I'm looking at it, wow, okay, now that I see it, maybe this is what they meant, I don't know. They didn't say anything about this in the thing, but there's a bolt here and here, and on the other side, here and here. It's possible you could break this into two pieces and take it out that way. Yeah, I think you can. There's another one here. I don't know if that's... Yeah, one here as well. All right, so if you can get nuts and... if you can get the tools on it, you might try taking this one, this one, this one, these two here, and up here's another one, and just pull it out in two pieces. Anyway, I don't know if you call that a victory or not. It's still got the stud in the engine. All right, let's look. Did I damage anything here? I was dragging on this mostly. This seems to be okay. That's the noise suppressor. This wire is okay, which is tough because there's only a single wire. This light is annoying. There's a single wire coming out of this one. Is that the knock sensor? I don't know. Nah, it should be down the head. Okay, so I think everything's okay. I 3D printed plugs to stick in these. If you guys have a 3D printer and you're doing this, and you want the file, let me know. I can just send it to you. They work pretty well. 3D prints are not watertight, but it seems pretty clean. I mean, it's a little bit damp there. All right, everything seems to be in order here. I don't see anything obviously broken. Now I've got a great big giant gaping hole down there, and I'm hoping the supercharger is smaller. Let's go look. All right, that's it for this step. You may have noticed that I'm fortunate enough to have a lift, and you absolutely do not need a lift to do this job. As you can see, I did very little work from underneath, and I think you could probably do that in your driveway with, you know, on jack stands. 2 jacks, however, would be handy.
because you saw that I did a lot of movements of the engine independent of the car, right? So you have one for the car and one for the engine. And honestly, none of this stuff is very expensive compared. In fact, I paid about as much for my lift as I did for the Supercharger. So if you're a car guy and you do a lot of this kind of work and you're spending big bucks on parts, you might consider lift. They're not as expensive as you'd think. Obviously, having enough room for one is the real problem, but a lot of them are designed, you know, to fit in garages. I mean, mine sort of barely. You have to have a high ceiling. I kind of don't, and I can only lift my car about 4 feet. But that's better than crawling around on the ground. I get kind of old and I'm getting sick and tired of, you know, being on concrete all the time and getting up, getting down, getting up, getting down, that sort of thing. It's the best thing I ever bought for my car. All right, anyway, the video is really long now. All I can tell you is that I did a lot more off camera than I cut out 10 minutes of struggling with that intake manifold. It was just, you know, putting motor mounts in, lowering it down, bringing it back up, taking motor mounts out, swapping them around, going down, trying to get on that bolt with, you know, the pipe wrench I mentioned and other things, and it just wasn't working for me. Fortunately, the stud did come out fairly easily afterward. I don't remember how I got it out. I didn't put it on the video, so I don't remember, but it did come out okay. There's just as much wrestling at this point with the Supercharger. So hopefully these videos are helping somebody, because I think I can save you a lot of time I wasted on the intake manifold by just making sure you clear enough stuff out of the way and just cut that stud, or just don't waste time on this stud. Don't waste days on it like I did. Just get it out. And I think going in is another problem. The starter, I don't think I emphasized it enough. The 2ZZ starter is not going to work with this. I don't know why Monkey Wrench wouldn't mention this. It will interfere, and you might break the Supercharger, that plastic part on the Supercharger, if you try and put it in that way. You need a 1ZZ starter. It should be in the instructions, and it should be, you know, as part of the kit or something. All right, that's enough. Excuse me, that's enough for this time. Thank you for watching, and I've got some guests coming, so it's going to be a few days before the next one comes out, but I'm going to try and get all these Supercharger ones done fairly quickly so that the whole set's there for anybody who wants to watch. All right, thanks.